Welcome to the Carnivore Cast, a podcast focused on the carnivore diet and lifestyle, with practical advice from successful carnivores, citizen scientists, and top researchers. I'm your host, Scott Meslinski, and I'm here to speak with experts and experienced carnivores to get answers to your biggest and meatiest questions while helping you live your best life as a carnivore. Pamela J. Kenney, at Pam Kenney, has been carnivore for a year and a half. She's cured her IBS, improved her body composition and overall health, and most importantly, her relationship with food through carnivore. Pamela shares her story and pictures of her delicious cooking with thousands of followers on her Instagram at Love Our Low Carb Life. She is also currently studying holistic nutrition. Welcome to the show, Pamela.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you for having me. I feel like I'm in really great company. I've listened to all your podcasts and take something away from all of them. Keep up the great work.
Wow. Thanks so much. Hopefully they haven't put you to sleep, but excited to have you here. Would love to just start with, for folks listening, a little bit about you, if you could tell me your story.
Absolutely. So I found keto for weight loss back in 2013. I was pretty successful with taking off the weight, but fell off the wagon, which seems to be a pretty common thread for ketoers. So I was on and off for a few years, and in December of 2015, I found myself at my highest weight of my life. So New Year's Day, 2016, I committed to strict keto, no cheats, and I was very successful. For 1 year, rather effortlessly, I lost 55 pounds. I didn't do a lot of exercise, but I stayed on plan the entire year. I counted and I tracked my macros almost every single day. So after losing the weight, there were a few things that just still did not sit well with me. One was my energy level. It was not where I had hoped it would be. The second thing was how I looked in pictures. So I was so happy that I lost this 55 pounds over a course of a year. And when I saw a picture of myself, I couldn't stand the way I looked. I looked depleted. Now I recognize it as skinny fat, but I did not look healthy. So the other thing, which is kind of why that happened, was when I was 16, I was diagnosed with irritable bowel syndrome. So although keto did a lot of really great things for me, it did not help with my irritable bowel. So I did the usual treatment since I was 16. I did medication, I did oils, peppermint oil. I increased my fiber intake. Nothing helped. In fact, a lot of my symptoms got worse. So not being able to remedy my IBS was definitely contributing to this depleted feeling that I had. And it was not just on the outside, it was on the inside as well. It clearly led me to a lot of nutrition deficiencies. And then I had just spent 1 whole year focused on my fat macros. So I was eating a lot of fat bombs, salad dressings, oils. It was a heavy vegetable diet. I was using heavy creams and sauces, which we know are full of industrial seed oils now. I just wasn't focused enough on the nutrients. So here I am 1 year into my really committed keto journey. I've gone from a size 18 extra large down to a 12 medium, and I'm unhappy. And I'm still suffering from some inflammation. I was suffering from edema on my right ankle that would not go away, irritable bowel, low energy. Mentally, I was foggy, and I was taking Ativan on the regular for anxiety. So it was right around this time that I found Dr. Sean Baker, and I was following him on Twitter, and he was talking about this all meat diet. So I was really, really interested. So if I can remember correctly, he put sort of a challenge out to his followers to try it for 30 days or a month, whatever. So I chose to do it February 2017, mostly because it was the shortest month. um, so I honestly believed that after those 21 days were complete, that the first thing I would do was I would eat a giant salad. Like I really did not think that this was going to be my new way of life. So February 1st, I dug my heels in and I went for it. And then this is when things really got good. So around February 5th, so I'm 5 days into my meat only diet, my digestion starts to improve. I have no bloating, no gas, no stomach upset, no cramps. My bathroom habits become regular and uneventful. It, at this point, felt way too good to be true. But here I am. I think I'm in my 21st month of carnivore, and I can count on one hand how many times I've had digestion issues over that course of that time. So the other thing that happened right around that same time was that my energy level surged. I could really feel it happen. I can honestly say that I never felt this kind of level of energy in all of my life. Afternoon dives and energy completely disappeared. And actually, I often feel euphoric in the afternoon, especially after fasting. I try to fast 18 hours a day throughout the week, like Monday to Friday. When I eat, especially if I eat red meat for my first meal, I feel euphoric from it. It's the best feeling. So obviously, my nutritional deficiencies had led me to this really low energy place, and digestion and nutrient assimilation, so clearly affect our energy levels. And my meat only diet had improved both in a very short period of time. So once the 21 days were up, I felt no reason to revert back to keto or to reintroduce fiber. I was feeling amazing. So now here I am 22 months later. And I have to say though, when I did transfer from keto to carnivore, I was very low carb, probably less than 10 grams a day. So I didn't have any transition issues either going from one to the other. I stay off the scale completely. I don't have a very good relationship with it. Last I checked, I have gained back in between probably 10 and 12 pounds, depending on the day. But I have not gone up in any clothing sizes or in inches. I can still clearly see myself shrinking, especially now when I look at pictures of myself. But this time I'm really happy with what I see. I look healthier. My color is better. My shape is better. I have more of an hourglass figure now. I look robust, but I feel feminine. And I feel really, really great on the inside. And I think that shows too. So I've not only cured my IBS, but I've increased my energy, and I have not had the need to take any anti-anxiety meds this entire time. Wow. I don't have any cravings anymore. That was a big thing with me on keto. I still suffered from a lot of cravings, which is what helped, caused me to fall off the wagon in the first place. I don't have any cravings anymore. And also, I have not been ill once. So as a child and as a teenager, I was plagued with throat infections, tonsillitis, strep throat. I had mononucleosis. I had, and then I got pneumonia. So it felt like I was on antibiotics a lot. And it was probably one of the biggest contributors to my poor gut health. But since I have gone carnivore, I have not even caught a cold, and I have 3 kids and I work in an office. So it's not like I'm not around sickness. So clearly I have improved my immune system. And I mean, the list goes on. I don't have any more inflammation or edema. My monthly cycle has been regulated. I'm symptom free. I mean, women have so many different dietary needs than men do. There's not one diet for everybody, but I think that carnivore has really helped me. It's made my life so much better. And it's not just how I feel. I mean, my libido is stronger, my hair and nails grow faster, but my blood work and what my doctor looks at, I have normal blood pressure, I have high total cholesterol, and I have high HDL, but I have very low triglycerides. My HDL, triglyceride, and my total cholesterol HDL ratios are fantastic. My A1C is 4.9. Like, those are the things he's looking at, and he's more than happy with those. And so am I.
Yeah, that's all incredible to hear, Pamela. And one thing I love about you, and I think a lot of your followers love about your posts on Instagram, is how honest you are. And I can hear it now with you talking about your health, not being afraid to admit that you were falling off the wagon with the keto diet occasionally. And then also just how it affected your mentality, like almost not recognizing yourself in the mirror, feeling depleted, contrasting that with how you feel on carnivore, even though you doubted it coming into it and you felt, oh, I'm going to go through this and then go back to salads and vegetables. It's remarkable to hear how much meat has healed you and your quality of life and mentality has improved, and how that's connected with not only body composition, but a lot of these other physical changes and symptom relief you've had. So love hearing that. And one thing you touched on is you said you mentioned a couple times malnutrition.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit more about that? Why do you think you were malnourished? Was that partially due to the IBS or what you were eating? Can you just answer that?
Well, IBS definitely contributed to the deficiencies in the malnutrition. But honestly, like, we are eating a lot of things that are not even food. And all of that is leading to malnutrition in the majority of the population. I mean, the signs are everywhere. Everything from skin conditions, cravings, obesity, sleeplessness, fatigue, physical and mental, chronic and acute illnesses. We need to be paying much more attention to like food intolerances and allergies. I mean, gut permeability is so common today, and it's because we're asking our digestive systems to process unnatural products every single day. And I mean, it has to stop. I don't even like calling it food. But, we're up against a really hard thing right now because the food industry is really coming at us strong with, catchphrases and things like that. And I just have to say, like, when you see a catchphrase, you really need to pay attention to what you're eating. If you're buying a product that says anything like natural, antioxidant, superfood, has a health check symbol, therapeutic grade, these are typically industry terms, and they're created to distract you from the ingredients on the label. Fortified, let's eat food that doesn't require fortification in the first place. I was at Walmart last weekend and I came across avocado margarine. And I, of course, had to pick it up and look at it. So avocado is in really big letters. And, I'm thinking, is this real? So when I pick it up and I look at it closer, the word with, very small letters, is in front of avocado. And when I read the label, it's 68% canola oil. But of course, because avocados now, are put out there as such a great fat and everybody should be eating them, people are looking at that thinking, oh, this is a health food. And it couldn't be more opposite. That is toxic.
Yeah, that's insane. I can't imagine seeing that and walking down the grocery aisles. It's amazing how many things are made with grains, soy, corn, and vegetable oils. It's just remarkable. And it's a giant experiment that's going on with the human population, of seeing how long our bodies can resist and endure kind of these frankenfoods.
That's about it. Yeah.
And Pamela, can you talk a little bit, you talked about weight loss, and it sounds like you've approached weight loss from a few different angles, which I find really interesting. And, I've had similar experiences myself doing it in really unsustainable ways, more sustainable now, feel great about how it's worked with carnivore, and my story mirrors yours in a lot of ways. But can you talk a little bit about some myths around weight loss, both that you think are common and maybe you encountered in your journey?
Absolutely. So I've done all of the diets in the past and none of them have worked. I might have lost a few pounds here and there only to gain it back, usually plus some. Now I don't track anything anymore. I don't track calories, and I sometimes will jump on MyFitnessPal and track my macros, especially if I'm eating the same thing for a whole entire week. But it's mostly because I get a lot of questions on my Instagram about calories and macros. So I do try to provide some information there. It's almost impossible to overeat nutrient dense food. And when you're eating nutrient dense food and you're healing your body and your hunger signals are on point, you don't need to worry about things like that. If anything, I have to be very cautious of under eating because I can go long periods of time now without food. I've been fat adapted for 3 years, and I still have some weight to lose. So, my body goes into fat burning mode. I can go a long time without eating. But it is a much simpler process than what big food and big pharma would lead us to believe. And even in the fitness industry, of all of my years of dieting, not one single person talked to me about insulin resistance or leptin resistance. All of the advice I would ever get was to eat less and move more. I mean, did we really evolve to count steps and calories? The concept is absolutely ridiculous to me now, now that I'm living this life. I mean, you eat less and you slow your metabolism. You move more and you increase your hunger. And then they want you to move more and drink protein shakes, and burn glucose, and you'll never, ever oxidize fat for energy. So you need to be able to tap into the fat to burn it, to have weight loss that is sustainable. And while you're doing all this, you damage your hormones, whether it be your sex or reproductive hormones, your hunger hormones, leptin, ghrelin. You need to be able to regulate your food intake naturally, or you set yourself up, for failure. And there's an unending list of things that can happen to you when you're deficient in things: infertility, PCOS, diabetes, brain disorders, nerve problems. I mean, food is meant to protect our health and give us longevity. But it seems like we're trying to do the opposite to our bodies all the time, and people are suffering because of it.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think a lot of people are just trying to look for a quick fix or shortcut. And it's so easy when you're looking for the confirmation and confirmation bias on these things to go and find groups and people who will tell you exactly what you want to hear. You can track your macros, you can count your calories, you can change your body in 8 to 12 weeks. You can make it sustainable. But unless you're going to do that for the rest of your life, and sort of live with a base level of deprivation at all times, good luck, because hunger is going to come back around. And
it always comes knocking, and it will always win. Always.
Yeah. And I love the way, I think it's Ben Bickman puts it. He says, if you were trying to get as hungry as you could for a Thanksgiving feast, you would go and do a lot of exercise and not eat very much. You'd basically do, you'd move more and you would eat less. So why do we think that that's going to somehow help us lose weight and make us less hungry? We're not machines. We're not robots. Willpower is finite. And even if you're really, really disciplined, it's just so hard. And it'll set you up for failure, and it'll make it harder in the future, to your point with hormones.
And to me, this lifestyle is very sustainable. I mean, I really have no desire to go back to the way that I was eating before. I have lost my taste for most foods at this point. The only thing I really want is meat, and I really only want red meat. When I first started out, I was eating everything. I was eating, chicken, pork, changing it up. And slowly I just lost my taste for even those foods. And red meat is all I really want. And sometimes I laugh, I eat steak after steak every day. And, my husband grills one up and puts it in front of me. And it's like the first time I've ever had a steak before. I mean, it really does blow my mind. And I have to say that it's not, not just the physical change, but the mental change. Zero carb Zen is the real deal. When your body and your mind are nourished properly and your organs are working, effortlessly to do their jobs, you are able to cut out the noise in your body. And it really allows you to become more self-aware. And to me, that's a real start of a healing process, mentally and emotionally. This might come a little bit from age now and maturity too, but I would not trade this way of life for anything. I feel like the sky is the limit for me now. I'm motivated and I just feel so happy all the time.
That's amazing. That's so awesome to hear, Pamela. And I love the way you put it. And I feel the exact same way. I think it really just the pure pleasure you get out of meat and having meat over and over again is something that so many people cite on this diet. And it sounds crazy because if you had told me before I started it, and you mentioned this when you were first experimenting with carnivore, if you are going to eat only meat every day, you're going to get so sick of it. You're going to crave other foods. You're going to crave variety. But for some reason, those cravings just go away and you become more and more mentally clear and more you crave that one food. It's really strange and it's so hard to describe to someone who hasn't experienced it.
Yeah. And I have a pretty, limited menu, but I mean, it's not restrictive. So every day I eat red meat. I still eat eggs without limit. I eat bacon. And the red meat that I eat mostly is pasture raised and grain finished, which is my preference. For taste and cooking, that's what I love. I like seafood. I eat wild caught shrimp, some fish. I love oysters, lobster. I still eat dairy, cheese, full fat cream, butter, ghee. And I do still have some non-optimals in my life. I still drink coffee and I still drink alcohol, red wine mostly. And I still dab in a little dark chocolate once in a while. But that's about, that's what I eat.
Yeah. Yeah. Good for you. And, your meals look delicious and you found a lifestyle that works perfectly for you. And, it sounds like you're getting all the benefits. So why narrow the foods even more? I think that makes total sense. And just because I know folks will ask, Pamela, can you talk a little bit about, how much you eat in a day? And then also, you mentioned earlier the fasting. How does fasting play into that? And why do you fast?
Okay. So fasting was never something that I sought out to do. It happened naturally to me. So I kind of just went with it from there. So with the way my lifestyle works, Monday to Friday, I work days, I fast 18 hours. So we usually finish dinner, by 6:00 p.m. And then I won't eat again until 1 or 2 in the afternoon. So I try to go 18 hours Monday to Friday. And then I have a feeding window. So I'll kind of have breakfast, lunch, and dinner within 6 hours. If I find that I'm really hungry, I eat. I don't hold myself to the fast. I try to just really listen to my body. On the weekends, I don't think about fasting much at all. We usually, like to have a big brunch, which is earlier in the day, and then dinner. So we would typically only have 2 meals on the weekend. And then if I'm having a really big dinner, like if we're going out for dinner or we're getting together with friends or something, I will typically do a 24-hour fast. I don't know why I started doing that, but when I'm fasting, I feel really good. So, I mean, it's the ketones, it's my brain, I feel sharp. I feel super energetic. I'm just really clear. I just really love the way that I feel. But like I said before, when you can go long periods of time without food, you need to make sure that you're packing your calories in during your feeding window. So I can honestly, I would say average 2,000 to 2,200 calories a day. But I mean, I could go up to over 3,000 easily. But like I said, I try not to track that. I just try to listen to my body and what my body wants. And when I'm hungry, I eat. And when I'm not hungry, I don't eat.
Yeah.
And when I'm not hungry, I don't even think about food. I literally could be right in front of me and it just doesn't register to eat that.
Yeah, that's amazing that you've gotten to that place with your relationship with food. And do you think the fasting helps with you mentioned the mental clarity, and I think that enough is worth practicing fasting or at least intermittent eating. But do you also think it's helping with weight loss?
Yes, I do. So definitely, I mean, during that fasting time, I'm, oxidizing fat. I'm using the fat on my body for energy. I've tapped into it. And not only that, but I found that it was very beneficial for loose skin. So after losing the 55 pounds, my stomach is wrinkly. I have, all of this extra skin. It's gone now. So I find that fasting is really, really good for loose skin.
Yeah, that's great. And that's excellent that you can get some of the benefits from that. And Pamela, you've experimented with all these different types of diets. You've stumbled into carnivore. Can you talk about just some of the lessons you've learned? You've already touched on a lot of them, but I'm curious, what did you have to learn through sort of trial and error and stumbling versus research and, just going and finding information?
Well, I read a lot and I listen to a lot of podcasts. I'm studying nutrition, but there are so many myths out there that have people just assume now that they're right. And really, anyone that's entrenched in this community knows the truth now and knows that our dietary guidelines were not evidence-based and we really need to demand them now. When I tell people what I eat and I try, not to talk about it too much, but some people will recognize, that I'm only eating the meat and they'll ask. The things that people say to me, which I think are pretty typical and every single carnivore out there will relate to this. But the first thing is, you're going to get scurvy. And explaining glucose transport to somebody just doesn't win you over any friends, and the RDAs are based on somebody that consumes a lot of sugar and plants, and that just doesn't apply to us. People talk about how meat is so indigestible that it stays in their stomach for 3 days. I hear that all the time. Explaining, I don't know if you read about it, but the guy with the colostomy bag that did the experiment with the meat and the vegetables.
Yes.
Okay. So explaining that to someone doesn't win you over any friends either.
Do you want to just talk about that for folks listening who might not be familiar?
Sure. So, he had his colon removed and he had a colostomy bag and they just did an experiment with feeding him vegetables and feeding him just meat. So the outcome basically was that there were pieces of the vegetable in the bag, almost in whole pieces. And the bottom line is that if something comes out looking like it went in, you did not get a lot of nutritional value for it. Meanwhile, the meat would come out, just a small amount of liquid, completely digested and not a lot of waste.
Yeah. I think there's so many myths around carnivore, so many myths around meat, and there are a lot of complex explanations and simple explanations. And it's almost when someone encounters carnivore for the first time, it shakes so many of their beliefs. And you just have to find a way to sort of start slow and pick your battles and not seem overly defensive, and not defend people. And I struggle with this every single time someone asks me about it. But I'm coming more and more to, this is based on the research I've done. I've found a ton of success for it. I would never try to force it on anyone. Here's what I've experienced. And then they'll ask questions like, aren't you worried about this? And I'll just frame it in terms of, this is what I found. This is what the research has shown. But you don't have to do this, but I'd encourage you to try if you're interested.
Yeah. I mean, we just need to live by example. I mean, that's what I try to do. I mean, the bottom line is that meat, with the combination of sufficient digestive enzymes, is the easiest thing to digest. And anybody who eats a carnivore diet and practices OMAD or IF knows this by their own digestion and elimination. The fact is that carnivores just don't create a lot of waste because meat is a usable resource and it's highly digestible.
Yeah, that's a great point. And Pamela, you talked a bit about some of the foods you eat on a daily basis and some of the sort of exceptions you make around zero carb. But just because, your Instagram is the best carnivore Instagram in terms of food pics and you're always making all these delicious recipes, I want to ask you more about some of that. So one, just in terms of, affecting your health, how do you feel when you include things like alcohol, things like dairy? It seems like it doesn't affect you that much, but just wanted to follow up on that a little bit.
Well, thank you for that lovely compliment, for one thing. I have to say that I'm not affected by dairy at all, with one caveat. I have a little bit of tendonitis in my right elbow, and I'm wondering if I eliminated dairy, if I could get rid of that. It's really my only physical complaint. So I am thinking in the next couple of weeks to go, maybe 30 days without dairy and see if there's any difference there. But I mean, I don't eat a lot of dairy. I do like a little halloumi as a side meal or a side dish to my meat. And I do have the cream in my coffee in the mornings, but I try to keep that minimal too, though, because I'm fasting. So I always try to keep my fasting window less than 50 calories, to keep the fat burning. And alcohol, sometimes I overdo it and I pay for it, but, I had a really fun night. So that's the toss up.
Yeah. Good for you. It's a lifestyle and you're doing this for the long haul. So
Exactly.
I think you're doing great. And your halloumi looks incredible.
Have you had it yet?
I haven't had it. I did fried brie in the air fryer for the first time today.
Oh, very nice.
That was delicious. It just was crispy on the outside with the rind crust, and it sort of just oozed out. But I have to ask you how you make your halloumi.
So I usually fry it in the pan in butter. So you put it in a cold pan and let it heat up, and you just flip it once, and that's it.
Wow. Have to get some of that.
And it's super delicious. It's got this really nice, salty taste to it. Oh, and I should add that I do salt my meat too. I know there's a lot of discrepancy in the carnivore world about salting. So I salt to taste, and I do notice though that sometimes I don't think about it. So I don't use it. I'll eat the meat and it will be gone and I'll be like, oh, I didn't put salt on it. So that's another thing that I think, just like listening to your body. Same with adding butter to a leaner cut of steak. Sometimes I'll do that, but sometimes I never think about it. So I feel like when I am craving fat, I probably think about adding the butter more. But yeah, so I just wanted to add that to my menu. Those are two things that I do in an almost daily basis.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I'm curious, now that you bring that up, you talked about sometimes tracking macros just for the benefit of your Instagram audience, or followers who are curious. I'm curious. It seems like folks succeed with a wide range of sort of fat to protein ratios. And I don't think it's great to pay too much attention to it, but just curious what, in the past when you have tracked, where roughly yours line up in terms of grams or calories.
So this was a really telling thing for me. So after going carnivore and, getting a lot of questions about my macros, because you get more questions about macros than calories when you live this kind of lifestyle. When I would plug it into my Fitness Pal and I'm, meat heavy diet, my macros would always be perfect. They'd always be, exactly what I was looking for, 80, 20, 75, 25. Like every time I did it, I'm like, I'm right on track. This is right where I want to be. So that just really tells me, that meat is our perfect food.
Yeah. Yeah, that's excellent. And just to clarify for folks listening, you mean like 80% fat, 20% protein, or 75% fat by calorie, right?
Yes.
Not by grams, right?
By calorie, yes.
So that's a little bit more than 1 gram of fat per gram of protein.
Yes.
Got it. Cool. And just curious, do you supplement at all, or do you try to have organ meats on a regular basis? I know you're eating a lot of shellfish, so you're sort of getting the whole animal, and eggs, so you're getting the whole animal there. But curious if you supplement or add organ meats.
I do not supplement at all. The only thing I guess that maybe someone might consider is I do an Epsom salt bath at night, but I mean, there's no real data that shows that has any benefit to us. It just feels good. So that's why I do it.
That's nice.
It helps, I sleep really well, and I think that contributes to my good sleep. So yeah, no supplements at all.
And that's great. And do you purposely include organ meats, liver, anything like that in your diet?
So I don't eat organ meats, and I don't believe I ever have eaten organ meats. It's not something that I'm opposed to. The last couple times I've been to the grocery store, I've picked up the beef liver and thought about it. I have not purchased it yet. I think probably I will incorporate it in the future. I've learned definitely to never say never. I think I would probably, chop it up really small and mix it in with my ground beef to start. But I definitely think I will be incorporating that in the future. It's not because I feel like I have some sort of deficiency or I feel like I need to have that in my life, but, I don't think it will hurt me either.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I go back and forth on this all the time. Folks are probably sick of me talking about this on the podcast, but, it's definitely telling that there are folks who have been zero carb for over 10 years and don't include organ meats and say they don't feel great on them. But at the same time, there are folks identifying that it's nutrient dense, and there seems to be some anthropological evidence that our ancestors ate organ meats at least some of the time. But then again, what does nutrient dense mean for a carnivore? Like you mentioned at the beginning, all nutrient values were established. Some of them were established just based on nothing, but a lot of them were established assuming a carbohydrate-based metabolism, which we know affects nutrient uptake. So it's really hard to say if we need things like liver in the diet.
Yeah. I mean, there's been such a big change in our food supply. This is something that we really need to be paying attention to. We are meant to eat meat. It's been the one constant through evolution of the food that is available to us. It is responsible for our large brains, and it's responsible for our place at the top of the food chain. And now it's being blamed for all of these modern day diseases. I mean, we really need to incorporate some common sense here. I'm only 43 years old. In evolution, that is a very small fraction of time. When I was a child, I don't recall much obesity, diabetes, prediabetes, heart disease, cancers, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. I mean, and we need to look at what has changed, because unfortunately those things are pretty much the norm these days. And the one thing that has changed is our food supply. I mean, even our seemingly healthy foods have changed. The USDA food tables show this. I mean, if you take a look at them just from the 1960s, there's a clear decline in the nutrient value of our food. We cannot expect to grow nutrient-dense foods in nutrient-depleted soils. It just does not work like that. We need the ruminants. We need them sequestering the carbon, replacing nitrogen, creating healthy topsoil. And we need them to turn grass, which needs rain and sun, into the nutrients that supply us with the food that the human species was evolved to eat, which was meat. I mean, even if you compare what's in the grocery stores, as far as mass produce goes, the most important thing to agriculture is yield. And they want everything to look the same and smell the same and feel the same. But as a kid, you know, in your grandmother's backyard garden, or even if you're surfing the internet, you see those pictures of backyard vegetables and they're the funny shapes and funny sizes. You know, they get really big or they're really small or they're really odd shaped. Well, do you ever see any of that in a grocery store? I mean, you never do. We need to get back to that. I mean, I don't have a problem with anybody eating vegetables, but it's clear that the nutrients are missing from them. And that's the problem, because you're taking away the nutrients. And then everybody from eating, you know, insoluble fiber and toxins has gut permeability. And these toxins from the vegetables are getting into our systems and wreaking havoc. Well, we need to go back to the basics. There was a study done by our national newspaper here in Canada, just with potatoes. You know, in the last 50 years, the potato is probably the most eaten vegetable in Canada, I would assume. The minerals and the vitamins dramatically declined in potatoes. You know, all of the vitamin A, vitamin C was down, iron, calcium, riboflavin. Like, it was very clear in a very short period of time that we have planted these vegetables in soil that is not good because they need to have the yields, and we're paying the health price for it. I mean, we really need to stop and think about this.
Yeah, that's super interesting, and some great points there around nutrient depletion and how it's affecting our food supply, particularly around monocropping. And we're the worst about this in the U.S., just depleting all of the topsoil. And then we have these foods that are losing more and more nutrients, gaining more and more chemicals from having to spray them with weed killer and insecticides to keep bugs and animals from eating them. I just think, you know, the way you talk about ruminants, it's so magical. The more and more I learn about livestock and the science around cows, the way they're able to convert completely inedible food stuff, scraps from the grains we harvest, barley, wheat, things that are almost inedible to humans or completely inedible, and just create this bioavailable, nutrient-dense, perfect food for us.
Isn't it wonderful? I'm so thankful for them.
Yeah, me too. Every day. And I think that's something that just it isn't out there in the popular media enough.
It isn't, and it needs to be. And, you know, and that's why, you know, you're here. That's why I'm here. I feel like this is a very pivotal time in nutrition science and our guideline recommendations. We need to be demanding more. I mean, we have really a lost generation on our hands. We, you know, as a kid, you know, at 43, I remember, you know, most of our meals were meat-based. You know, you had to shake the milk because the fat separated. We ate butter. But we have kids now that are raised that have only ever had, you know, cereal and skim milk for breakfast and sandwiches for lunch. You know, can you just imagine if breakfast programs were sponsored by local farmers and not Kellogg's or dumpsters? You know, what would happen with these kids? I mean, if they're not struggling with blood sugar dysregulation and they're not hungry by 10 o'clock in the morning, you know, how would that affect learning, test scores, you know, even ADD diagnosis, you know, if they're able to sit still, you know, what if they took this good nutrition with them through adulthood? You know, how would that affect mental health in teenage years and early 20s? How would it affect the statistics on diabetes, obesity? I mean, we need to really push for this change right now. This is a really, really important time. And I'm sorry, but the vegan agenda is strong and loud, and we do need to fight back.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's such an important message, that we need to be outspoken and not necessarily combative, but just more aggressive about presenting facts.
Facts
Because
and science, it doesn't lie.
yeah, and so many people are suffering, and I think, it's really sad to think about how it's affecting children and school lunches and what they put in their bodies every day, because that's going to have downstream effects for decades.
Yeah, nobody ever, just going back to the vegan thing, nobody would ever recommend a vegan diet, for a child or a baby or a toddler with their developing brain, but why then is it good enough for an adult? This doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, completely agree. It's scary.
They have to last a long time.
Yeah. Well, Pamela, this has been an excellent conversation for me. I feel like I've learned a ton, and I think folks will get a lot out of this. Would love to just ask where people can find out more about you.
Sure. So I'm on Twitter. My handle is at Pam Kenney, and I am very active on my Instagram, which is at Love Our Low Carb Life.
Great. Well, I'll definitely link to those in the show notes, as well as your Meat Heals story, and really look forward to talking to you again in the future.
Thank you. I'm heading to Vegas this week. We're going to celebrate my husband's 50th birthday, and I have my reservation at my first Brazilian steakhouse. So
wow.
Excited.
That'll be a treat. Well, I hope you enjoy, and happy birthday to your husband.
Thank you so much, Scott. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you, Pamela. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Carnivore Cast. If you enjoyed this episode, please review on iTunes. It really helps us out, and share it with a friend. What questions would you like answered, or who would you like to hear from in the carnivore research community? You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Carnivore Cast, or go to carnivorecast.com. You can also email me at info@carnivorecast.com. I'd love to hear from you. Until next time, keep it carnivore.